Good. The Hangout is on air. I think it's recording. Right? Okay. Ready?
I'm good.
All right. Hi, welcome to Lawline in the News. I'm David Schnerman. Today we're talking about Greece. We have Roger Arnold, a renowned economist, an advisor for ALM, as well as a writer for The Street, as well as, most importantly, a past faculty member for lawline.com. Roger, we talked about Greece probably 4 years ago, and you said back then, I don't want to quote you, but you said they are going to default and go bankrupt. Where are we at today, and what's going to happen in your estimations?
I think as of literally today, okay, right where we are right now as we are speaking, that the worst is now behind for Greece. Their debt to GDP level got up to be about 180%, and that's very high. That's the second highest in the world. Japan is the only other country that's higher than that. Several things have occurred in the past 5 years, though, that have actually helped to drive the debt level so high in Greece. And a lot of that is representative of the fact that the economy's been shrinking, David. The Greeks by the Europeans, most specifically the Germans, but other organizations within Europe have been involved in this as well, has driven the GDP in Greece down by about 30% over the course of the past 5 years. This is a horrific shrinking of their economy. Most interestingly, though, the Greek government has been able to reduce their government spending by even more, a reduction by about 32%. So they have actually gone a long way towards meeting the austerity goals that have been forced upon them, really, by the Northern European neighbors they have. As we begin moving forward from here, though, it looks to me, finally now, because, most importantly, Greece finally now has, or at least claims to have, a primary budget surplus. What that means is, even if they get no money from the ECB or the European Financial Stability Facility or the IMF or anybody else, they can pay their bills just on their own. They can't service their debt, but they can pay their bills. This is a really big deal. It's kind of akin to you lose your job, you have no money, you're living off of money from your credit cards and your parents and whatever, and you're going to accept whatever terms they dictate to you. Then you get employed again. You have income again. You can pay your bills. You don't need their money. You need to figure out how to pay them back, but you don't need it to pay your bills. So this is a really empowering situation that Greece has finally found itself in for the first time now in about 6 years. This is going to completely change the dynamic, the relationship between the Europeans, their northern neighbors who have been their creditors, including the IMF, which is all of us around the world together, and the Greek people. What I mean by that is I think that the worst is now behind for Greece, and what will happen is we will move in two different directions. They will deal with running their country. The northern neighbors, their creditors, will stop really forcing austerity measures and other issues on the running of their country upon them, and they will start migrating now into a relationship where the creditors in Greece talk about the legacy debt issues, not the ongoing. That seems to be now behind us. The legacy debt issues. How are they going to service the debt they've taken on from the stability facility, the ECB, the IMF, and bondholders and some other smaller issues in there as well. So I think to put it in terms, it still could break in the other direction. By the way, okay, this thing it could still.
I like the optimism. What's the doom and gloom side of it?
Listen, looking at this just simply from what we would have referred to when I was in the Marine Corps as Kentucky windage, the worst is behind us. All right, the Greece has already gone through all of the hard work necessary to get to this situation. They've actually increased their tax collection. Tax collection is down by about 11% over the past 6 years. But remember, this is with the GDP contracting by a third. So that means their tax collection facilities have actually improved. They've restructured their government completely. All of the hard work necessary is really done. all the heavy lifting is done. So I think that the Europeans and the Greeks will get together and realize we've got to hold this thing together. We're almost there at this point.
Well, that's great to hear from you because I've never heard that position of it. Let me ask you a question. Have you seen the commercials on late night TV with Ron Paul essentially giving the doom and gloom of how everything's going to fall apart and you should go to his website? Have you seen this?
I have not seen them. I am familiar with the marketing firm that Ron uses or that is promoting his stance, and I'm very familiar with Ron. I used to know all of his people in D.C., 14th Congressional District in Texas. He did a great job. I think he had a lot of great ideas, but he's really he's singularly focused on central banking and monetary policy being the problem child for the entire world, and there's a lot more issues than that.
So the question is there some truth to what he's saying? And I know we're going off topic from Greece, but essentially the whole thing is, we printed all this money. Real estate in the past 5 years in the U.S., at least in New York City, is, at least in Park Slope, has gone up 4 times. And there's so much money concentrated that's printed in certain areas. Is, from what I remember when we spoke years back, is you can't print all this money and not expect another consequence or go down to 0 interest rates. They're saying they're afraid to raise the interest rate because we can't handle it. And if something else happens, there's no other backstop. Is there something on the horizon that concerns you still?
Absolutely. There's all kinds of things that concern me that I follow all around the world. If we had time, listen, next time I'm in New York, we'll sit down in your office and do a longer interview about all these things. But specifically with respect to monetary policy, not just in the United States, but around the world, the European Central Bank is going through it. The Bank of England is going through it. The Bank of Japan is going through it. China's going through it as well. Is that the monetary stimulus is not getting into the economy. It's getting into the asset markets over if you'll go look at the UK, for example, London real estate has ballooned up. Their market hasn't done as well, but real estate outside of London is going down while London real estate goes up. In the United States, the stock market's going up, real estate's beginning to go up, but high-end real estate especially, but it's not creating jobs. You're not seeing consumption-driven, production-driven jobs. So that the Fed is very, very frustrated with this entire process. And this is a lot of what Ron Paul is talking about with respect to we have a problem. But it's not just a Fed problem. It's a monetary policy problem. It's how our systems interact with fiscal authorities, regulatory authorities, legislative authorities, and how the private sector banks and their largest borrowers, really the top 300 or so companies in the United States, manage their money. And so there's a lot more to it than simply the monetary printing that's causing a problem. I can understand people wanting to point their finger solely there, but there's a lot of blame to go around to a whole lot of people in D.C. and New York especially.
Okay. Well, the bottom line from you, and this is, again, optimistic news for me, is you think that, and especially because they're in a surplus in terms of their own economy, that they're powerful enough to be able to say, look, we got to stop, we can't service this debt. That means there's power from them. They're in a good position. The worst is behind them. They're going to get together and move forward, and this hopefully will be a good thing for the world economy.
And by the way, I think the markets, some portions of the markets, even if you notice, the National Bank of Greece is up about 7% today. This is, remember, 5 days before the referendum will be voted on. This coming Sunday, the citizens are going to be afforded the opportunity essentially to vote, do we stay in the EU or leave? And really, that's what it comes down to. I think that they're going to vote to stay. I think the Germans and the ECB, the stability facility, is going to have to realize they've got to work something out with the Greeks, that the Greeks, because they're on a primary budget surplus now, are not simply going to be dictated to, nor should they be dictated to. It's now more of an even keel where both organizations are going to have to get together and talk this out. And I think the markets, give it within a week, and perhaps before the end of this week, I think the markets are going to realize the worst is behind us. They're going to survive this thing. And
Roger, thank you very much. As always, it's great to hear from you, and I enjoy learning more from you about the economy and on a macro and a micro level. And looking forward to having you in our offices.
Absolutely. Look forward to it, David. Thanks.
Cool. Awesome. So we're gonna
Something.
okay.